Part 44. The Lord of Reincarnation. Author, Wen Xiaogong. Chapter 433. Inside the bar. The voice was extremely noisy. Fang Xian and the homeless man sat at a remote bar. The bartender and the bodyguard looked at each other, feeling a little strange. Even if someone is willing to pay, they may not be willing to let this homeless man enter the store. Why did they agree just now? Fang Xian didn't care about these things. Looking at the voracious homeless man in front of him, he thought silently, a week ago, that was very close to the time when Luo Fu disappeared. The nameless homeless man on the opposite side devoured it, as if he was very hungry. On his body, there are not only sloppy marks, but also bruises from beatings. Obviously, in a small town that is exclusive to xenophobia, a foreigner who is very easy to bully suddenly appears, and he can probably fully appreciate the enthusiasm of the locals. If it is a young woman, it may be treated even more horribly. Fang Xian saw that he was almost finished eating, and suddenly asked, "Think about it again, have you really forgotten your origin?" His voice was blurred, and he suddenly used a little hypnosis technique he had learned. With the bonus of high spirit, this kind of low-level hypnosis doesn't need any props. There was fear on the homeless man's face. "I remember, my home seems to be here, at the highest place, but every time I say that, they beat me. This gentleman, don't be fooled by him, he is a liar." The bartender who delivered the wine passed by and reminded disdainfully, "The tallest villa here belongs to the fair and wealthy Mr. Walter. That is a kind gentleman who often does charity activities and has won the support of everyone in the town. Respect, the police officer in our town once drove the homeless man there, to Mr. Walter, but Mr. Walter didn't know him at all. This is a liar. He is not Mr. Walter at all, friends and relatives." The bartender was very indignant. His anger was beyond common sense, so Fang Xian had to send another banknote, with a little mental pressure, before sending him away. After eating the food, Fang Xian walked out of the bar with the homeless man. When he was high in the air, just glanced at the topography of the town. It was built on a gentle slope. The highest place in the town, clearly visible here, is a beautiful large villa. "Let's go, let's visit Mr. Walter." Fang Xian pulled the homeless man up the ramp. Along the way, he felt some nausea and malicious sights. This has exceeded a certain limit. It is not ordinary disgust, it is simply hatred, the kind that can brew murderous intent. Hilltop Villa. Fang Xian rang the doorbell, and not long after, a maid came to answer the door. "Sir, excuse me, She saw the homeless man with disgust on her face. "Do you know him?" Fang Xian asked with a smile. "He said he lives here." "Sir, this is a despicable liar who has deceived many people with lies." The maid's voice was high-pitched and sharp, her round face flushed with anger. "He pretends to be a relative of Mr. Walter, and often has strangers who don't know the truth. Man, bring him here. I want to see Mr. Walter." Fang Xian frowned. "No need, this one has caused a lot of trouble to Mr. Walter." The maid refused without hesitation. At this time, the movement at the front door also attracted the attention of the people inside the villa. What happened? A middle-aged man in pajamas came out with a dignified appearance, holding his beautiful wife in his arms, and two beautiful daughters beside him. When Fang Xian saw him, his pupils shrank instantly, and he was speechless for a moment. Love. He was a little angry, but also a little funny, thinking to himself, "It's a pity that I was so anxious to find you, so it turns out that you kid is hiding here and having a good time." Of course, he also knew that this was definitely not Love's original intention. His character has been distorted, and even his memory has been tampered with, thinking that he is Walter. The body at this time is no different from that of a walking dead. "Sir, are you here for him too?" Love looked at Fang Xian and smiled politely. "I can swear by Walter's local reputation over the years, I don't know this person, and he is not my relative. Yes, I believe. Fang Xian looked at the tramp next to him with a pitiful expression. This guy is probably the real Walter himself, right? A week earlier, Love, who had been mysteriously affected, had arrived to replace him. Took away his house, family, friends. Even the residents of the town think that Love is the real Walter. At present, it can be preliminarily determined that the scope of this kind of influence is probably a town. Why, Walter is still alive, and he doesn't want to leave here unless his amnesia, his pain, is also an important part of the ceremony. Some family members do not kill for the sake of killing. They require cooking and strict steps and processes according to certain rules. Otherwise, the ceremony will not be complete and the effect will not be good. Or, offerings are as dull and uninteresting as eating cake without cream. Fang Xian estimated that the latter possibility is more likely. When everything is revealed, whether it's Walter's pain or Love's despair, it may be the supreme delicacy and enjoyment for the hidden starry sky familiars. So, where is it? Fang Xian was thinking about this question, and suddenly raised his head. The night gave me eyes, and I will use them to pursue greatness. In an instant, his eyes changed. Without the whites of the eyes became pitch black, like two black holes and an abyss. This is his improvised spell, maybe it can be named Eye of Darkness or Eye of Peeping. At this moment, in Fang Xian's eyes, the entire town was shrouded in a dense layer of purple starlight. Everyone's pupils glowed with a strange color, but everyone didn't think it was unusual. Your eyes. Love stepped back in horror as his wife screamed and his daughter clung to his thigh. But behind their necks, Fang Xian saw a mollusk-like octopus-like creature clinging to it, its tentacles pierced the spine, and fiddled with the nerves. A descendant of the starry sky family. Fang Xian nodded. If it develops for you, it will be the real horror. He saw that there is also such a descendant in the maid and the tramp. The mother's body, isn't it in Love's body? Fang Xian made another discovery, which made things a lot easier. He recited the hymn of worms, and huge worms spewed out from the void, biting the necks of Love and Walter with their sharp mouth parts, wriggling non-stop. The child body struggled, but was quickly swallowed. Luo Fu's expression became blank for a moment, looking at the women next to him, with a horrified expression on his face. Damn it! The Lord of Reincarnation. Author, Wen Xiaogong. Chapter 434. What did I do? Love covered his face. He remembered. At the beginning, in the cave, the disgusting ghoul smell, and the madness of the other party. After the sound of the gunshot, the lead bullet specially made to deal with the ghoul directly blasted the hard skull of the opponent. On the way forward, the hot lead twisted, deformed, and turned into a huge lead flower, blowing off the opponent's head. But immediately, his neck hurt, as if he was having a nightmare. He lost control of his body. He saw himself sprawled uncontrollably, his throat rolling, with a great hunger for the ghoul's corpse. Everything that followed was indeed a nightmare. Love's consciousness was sober for a while, then blurred for a while. He felt as if he had grown wings and was flying freely in the sky. When everything calmed down, his consciousness returned to clarity, and he had already come outside a villa. Through the warm light from the window, he saw the harmonious and warm Walter family, and his heart was filled with a sick twist and longing. He yearns for family, love, a gentle wife, and two little angelic children. His dam of sanity began to unravel, and his lips quivered and moved as he chanted the incantation. It's me. Love's voice was low, and his hands were slowly put down. It was I who moved my hand. I used a spell to control Walter and replace his identity. I made a wish, and it responded to me. After finishing all that, he forgot everything and really became Walter. Even, with the help of the Starry Sky family, the memories of the entire town were tampered with. The real Mr. Walter turned into a beggar, and was almost about to die miserably under the hostility of everyone. I have fallen. I broke the oath of the keeper of secrets. I'm already a heterogeneous. I don't deserve to be an investigator. Love sobbed and half knelt on the ground. Dad, what are you talking about? The little girl next to her was also crying, pulling on Love's trousers. This can only exacerbate the pain of the two of them. Catherine, I am your father. Walter wanted to step forward, but when he saw his wife's terrified gaze and his daughter's direct avoidance, he was stunned, and 2 lines of tears flowed down his face. God, why do you punish me? Why do you let the devil instead of me? I will fight with you. He looked at Love, and was about to step forward to punch him. Even if the other party is a demon who has mastered the mysterious power, the huge anger made him ignore all of this. Wait a minute. Fang Xian stopped him directly, raised his foot, and kicked Walter aside. Love, you didn't fall, you just suffered pollution beyond imagination. The ability of the starry sky familiars should be humans. Some desires are infinitely magnified, and then induce you to make a wish. No. I've fallen, and this is the proof. Love raised his head, his scarlet eyes were revealed, his mouth was split open to the base of his ears, and there were densely packed sharp fangs. Ghouls. The person who devours a ghoul will become a new ghoul. No, there is no such precedent at all. Fang Xian shrank his pupils, then shook his head. Is this also the ability of the starry sky family? Yes, Love said painfully. It's too late, kill me, and give me eternal rest. I'm an old investigator, and I know how secret keepers treat people like us, even if it was you before, and you were almost imprisoned forever. Now when I go back, even if I am lucky enough not to be dissected on the operating table, I will be guarded and held until I die. While he was speaking, his wife fainted from witnessing the ghastly form of husband transformed into a ghoul. The originally sluggish maids and servants around them panicked, ran, and screamed, and seemed to lose too much sanity in an instant and turned into lunatics. Hiss. Did you see it? Ordinary humans are so fragile. You have a very high talent. The world was originally a hunting ground promised to you by the great. You are a master. Unleash that power and you will have it all. In the snake-like hissing sound, Fang Xian also seemed to hear a voice. Good bewitching ability. Maybe you should not be called the Starry Sky family, but the bewitching Demon King? Fang Xian raised his head and waved his hand. The black light flashed like a moon arc, cutting off a section of the tentacles. It was translucent, and seemed to be filled with purple liquid inside, exuding a charming brilliance. At this moment, it fell to the ground, wriggling like a boa constrictor. Got you. Fang Xian raised his head. With the help of this connection, he finally saw the source of starlight in the town, the Starry Sky family. The other party is like a huge floating jellyfish, and also like a translucent octopus, suspended above the town, like a purple moon. Under the moonlight, everything in the whole town is like a dream. Even if you become a different kind, you have to live bravely. Love, at least, you still maintain your sanity. A bead of blood appeared on Fang Xian's finger. This drop of blood was slashed by him in the air, forming a double helix symbol that seemed to be constantly rotating, twisting, and sinking into Love's forehead. The old seal of blood. Love screamed, and from the pores, there seemed to be small black bugs coming out. This is not his ghoul characteristics, but the external pollution caused by the influence of the Starry Sky family. The bird with broken wings is my name. Eat your pain to feed my heart. After dealing with Luo Fu, Fang Xian's whole body was shrouded in black mist, and a bird with broken wings emerged, carrying him to fly high into the sky, and confronted the strange purple moon. The purple moon blinked. The next moment, many tentacles came whipping like pythons. Fang Xian laughed loudly and patted the wings of the broken-winged bird. The big bird flew around, displaying extremely exquisite flying skills, and the bat-like wings were like sharp knives, cutting off every tentacle. That is. On the ground, Love half kneeled. Although still in the form of a ghoul, part of his sanity has been restored. He looked at the big bird with a look of shock and pain on his face. If I'm not mistaken, it's the footless bird that once attacked the branch. Fang Xian knew about this flaw a long time ago, but it doesn't matter anymore. He joined the keeper just to gain more forbidden knowledge. Now, the keeper of secrets is not very attractive to him, and he is alone, so he can leave at any time. The bird with broken wings swooped down suddenly, bringing Fang Xian to the purple moon. He let out a long laugh, and the black mist turned into a black dagger, held in his hand, and slashed across the floating jellyfish. Puff! The purple moon in mid-air suddenly dimmed for a moment, and blood as black as ink flowed out. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Lord of Reincarnation. Author, Wen Xiaogong. Chapter 435. Above the town. All the townspeople, whether they were asleep or still active, couldn't help but make the same movement at this time. They raised their heads and looked at the bleeding moon, with expressions of anger and pain on their faces. The next moment, everyone frantically picked up their weapons and surrounded the villa on the hilltop. The family members of the Starry Sky have the ability to magnify desire, tempt prayer and fulfillment, but it must be realized in a distorted way. They can also reproduce offspring and master human thinking. Finally, immune to all physical attacks, even if a nuclear bomb explodes, it may not be able to hurt them. Your turn. Fang Xian stood on the back of the broken-winged bird, playing with the black dagger. If it is an investigator, even if it is a legend, it will be very troublesome to meet you, but unfortunately, you met me. Grunt. Grunt. At this time, inside the Starry Sky family, spores are rapidly taking root and growing. Many fungi spread wildly, and wild mushrooms were spawned one by one. The original Starry Sky family was just a luminous jellyfish, but now the image became even more curious. Inside the translucent body, sarcoids grew one after another, and continued to proliferate, spreading to the outside of the body. Many of Hopkins' studies are quite interesting, especially in terms of hunting family members and their weaknesses. Fang Xian thought indifferently, preparing to drive the bird with broken wings, and make up for the final blow to completely end the life of this family member. But suddenly, he felt a strong ripple. That's the creep of space. In the cognition of supernatural power, space already has its own life. At this time, in a void in front of Fang Xian, the void squirmed, and a figure spit out. He is tall and thin, wearing a black tuxedo, a red butterfly collar, and a silver mask on his face, like a gentleman invited to a masquerade ball. At this time, he stroked Fang Xian's chest very politely and said, "I'm sorry, this gentleman, this family member is too naughty. I will make up for the mistakes it made." The masked man opened a box in his hand. It looked like an old jewelry box, probably only fit a ring. But at this moment, the bleeding Zio screamed. If it had the expression of screaming, it would fly towards the jewelry box involuntarily, and the main body was directly swallowed by the jewelry box. The thick tentacles were still struggling outside, but it was useless. There seems to be a bottomless pit inside the small jewelry box, devouring all the tentacles greedily. Snapped. After the last tentacle was locked into the jewelry box, the silver-masked man clapped his hands. One after another, dim purple halos flew out of the town. It was the offspring parasitized on the residents of the small town, and one by one they took the initiative to separate from them, floating up like flying fireflies. After losing them, the residents of the small town who were furious and about to surround the villa passed out one by one and fell to the ground crookedly. They don't have the ability to reproduce. After leaving the human body, they will die soon and will not cause pollution. Those townspeople can just sleep. I am sorry for the trouble it caused, and I will take care of it. The silver masked man saluted again, and his figure sank into the void. Fang Xian watched the scene indifferently, and suddenly snapped his fingers. A silver key appeared in front of him, disturbing the fluctuations in the void. The space squirmed, also swallowing him. A forest. In the flashing silver light, two figures emerged one after another. The man in the silver mask stood still, pressed his forehead, and looked at Fang Xian in surprise. You don't seem to be an ordinary investigator? You're no ordinary pagan either. Fang Xian's voice was very affirmative. This is the first time I've seen the type that takes the initiative to contain supernatural creatures. We are different from other sections. The silver masked man waved his hand and said, in addition, the appearance of this family member was our mistake, because my organization accidentally leaked those documents, which led to what happened later. A series of things, so it is necessary for me to contain it. That is to say, don't care about anything else, even if ghouls come out to eat people. Fang Xian immediately understood, and also found that the masked man on the opposite side didn't have much hostility. If you have to count, it is probably a neutral faction among the heathen, calm and rational. Unfortunately, there are very few people like this. It's nothing to give you a family member. Why don't you talk? You are different from the pagans I've seen, not as crazy as them. Fang Xian's eyes flashed, and he became interested. I am glad to. The silver masked man smiled and said, I believe in a blind and ignorant existence. We think that the universe is a terrible deep sea, and human beings are just poor creatures that exist on a tiny island in this terrifying sea, may be destroyed by the sea at any time. Overthrow, because life is short, so you need to enjoy yourself in time. The existence of blindness and ignorance. Fang Xian was a little dumbfounded. The more powerful the ancient ruler, the closer he is to the wonders of the universe. He is inherently contradictory, split, chaotic, and ignorant. The masked man replied seriously, and, there is nothing wrong with believing in such an existence, because of blindness and ignorance, whether you curse it or praise it, it won't care, let alone ask believers to do something. Moreover, some rituals are more likely to be responded to, even if you don't give enough sacrifice. Under the hands of such an existence, it is easier to gain power. This means that the other party is ignorant, so it's easy to be deceived. Besides, maybe tens of thousands of years have passed when the other party falls asleep. So the restraint is also very low. Fang Xian was a little speechless. Although it's a bit disrespectful, that's what it means. We all know that the end is approaching, but we will neither advance nor stop it. We only focus on enjoyment. When disaster strikes, we may bring our cherished people together. Escape from this planet. The universe is huge, and there is more than one planet with life. The man in the silver mask tried his best to defuse the hostility, so, we have no conflicts. Sorry, I'm not very interested in the end of the world, but I am very interested in that blind and ignorant existence. Fang Xian suddenly smiled. What are the characteristics of your power? For this, what price do you need to pay? The power bestowed by our Lord. I'm sorry I can't say it directly, but we can use the rituals of any ancient ruler, and our sect has a good relationship with all the sections. This may be the special feature of our Lord. The masked man said softly, of course, as the price for gaining power, every time the full moon is full, the believers of our Lord will be in a period of sanity loss. There is no way. The Lord of Reincarnation. Author, Wen Xiaogong. Chapter 436. Then, the last question, you and the name of your sect. Fang Xian secretly shook his heart. In this world, there are too many hidden existences, special ancient gods, and sleeping ancient rulers. Even the keeper's headquarters doesn't have complete genealogical records. And now, he seems to have discovered a very extraordinary sect. This silver masked man is definitely a strong man. If they fight against the keepers, they may not be able to deal with it. Creator mission, you can call me Silverwing. Mr. Silverwing pressed his chest and bowed, his figure sank into the void. This time, Fang Xian did not intercept again. He looked around, sighed suddenly, activated the secret key, and returned to the villa. Love was still there, with Mr. Walter lying beside him. Everyone else fainted, and they didn't know how long they would sleep. Finally, what happened? Love has completely restrained his ghoul symptoms. When he saw Fang Xian coming back, he asked with a dry voice. "It's nothing, a heretic rescued it." Fang Xian shrugged his shoulders, and suddenly smiled. "That's not what you want to ask, is it? Why did you attack the branch? Are you depraved?" Sure enough, Luo Fu stared at Fang Xian with a complicated expression, and asked. "To get rid of that annoying old man, it's as simple as that." Fang Xian spread his hands. "As for the keeper, I don't have any hostility." Love let out a long breath, and he couldn't believe it. "A few months ago, you were an ordinary person, your talent is really amazing. Next, what are you going to do?" "This, I should be asking you," Fang Xian said with a smile. "If you choose to surrender to the secret keeper, I will flee as soon as possible. Besides, after you die, I will lay flowers on your grave." Love looked at his palm. Although it was covered with a human skin, he could clearly feel the inhuman hidden underneath. It has to be said that this is a kind of irony for an investigator whose lifelong ambition is to keep secrets and protect, but finally degenerates into a different kind. I want to go out for a walk alone. Maybe before, I cared too much about some things and lived for others. This time, I want to live for myself." Love took a deep breath and made a decision. "Very good." Fang Xian nodded. He originally wanted to pull Love into his sect, but now that he thinks about it, he might as well forget it. He stepped aside, mentioned the unfortunate Walter, and decided that it would be better to hypnotize him to forget what happened during this time. "What about you? Are you going to stay among the keepers?" Love watched Fang Xian hypnotize Walter and asked. "Me? Probably have to break away from the keeper and start chasing the real goal." Fang Xian replied. "His goal has never changed, and that is to regain his tribulation power and take another step forward on the road to eternal life. The rich knowledge gained from the secret keeper's headquarters has given him a certain way of thinking. Congratulations on your discharge, Vivian." Wearing a lady's attire, Vivian had to maintain a polite and hypocritical smile to deal with each guest. Thankfully, the bandages on her arm were finally removed and she was released from the hospital. To this end, her parents also specially held a banquet to celebrate. Well, Vivian's family conditions are quite good. Her father is a professor of history at Samir University, famous for her archaeology, and her mother is the only daughter of a rich man. The combination of knowledge and wealth bears the sweet fruit of love. At least, Vivian felt that her parents were doing well. And under the influence or leadership of her father, Vivian has been interested in some strange records in history since she was a child. For some unknown reason, her father has always strongly opposed her access to this content, and even did not allow her to enter the study to study those rare materials in the history circle. But it doesn't matter. Vivian has enough pocket money to search for all kinds of information she wants. Among these actions, her brother Joan played an important role. Although most of the items brought back were fakes, which almost defrauded my sister of all pocket money, but one of them was genuine, which was enough to pay back the fare. After dealing with everyone, Vivian found an excuse to go back to her room and lock the door. After closing the curtains, Vivian impatiently tapped her fingers on the table, making a very peculiar rhythm. This is the agreed-upon code. During the recovery period in the hospital, the gentleman she met taught her how to summon her own messenger. Vivian felt her inspiration was touched. She looked towards the corner of the room. There, a vortex was forming, and a windhound ran out, opened its mouth wide, and spit out a thick letter. She took the envelope, praised the messenger, sat upright, and began to study the information on the letterhead with the attitude towards the entrance examination. Dear Ms. Vivian, that mentor has contacted me again. He taught me a set of methods to maintain my sanity called spiritual stamp. I think it is very effective. I will share it with you below. This is a letter from Smith. It's great. I'm worried about my spirit's inevitable slip into the darkness after casting the spell. The teacher's knowledge is really rich and profound. Are all the apostles of our Lord so powerful? Little stars almost appeared in Vivian's eyes. Mentor, this is the code name they gave to that gentleman together. The other party connected believers who were like isolated islands together, taught them the knowledge of summoning messengers and maintaining reason, and their character was as noble as a saint. Boom. Just then, there was a knock on the door. The startled Vivian hurriedly hid the letter and messed up her clothes before opening the door and said dissatisfiedly, "It's not a gentleman's behavior to disturb a lady's changing clothes." She had already guessed who it was. Sure enough, a red-haired young man stood at the door with a slightly embarrassed expression. "Vivian, congratulations on your recovery. Actually, I have some news to share with you." He is Joan, Vivian's older brother, a mischievous villain. "What's the matter? Don't show me how many more girlfriends you have." Vivian rolled her eyes. "Otherwise I'll tell them one by one that when you were young, you burned off the director's hair and were spanked by your father." "Scandal. That's not it." Joan shook her hands wildly. "I want to say." He moved closer and lowered his voice. "The one you are most interested in, father recently auctioned off a copy of Hyman's diary, and he is locking it in his study, studying it without sleep or food. Sea people, fishermen. They still have diaries?" Vivian expressed her surprise. "Our father still has this kind of discerning vision. He must be someone important among the sea people. It is very valuable for studying the history of fishermen in ancient times." Joan blinked. "I hope you like me one's gift." The Lord of Reincarnation. Author, Wen Xiaogong. Chapter 437. Vivian's father was a very serious and rigid man. People who study history probably have such a character. He said that he didn't want Vivian to touch his research again, so with a very firm will, he completed the renovation of the study and added a big lock. However, for naughty Joan, picking locks is not a difficult skill to master. He and Vivian have been waiting for several days, during which their father seems to have been studying in the study without sleep or food. It wasn't until someone from the university notified me that I had to pack up and go to an important meeting that couldn't be missed. Come. Watching the car disappear at the end of the street, Joan immediately closed the curtains and waved to Vivian. "Mom is going to attend a cosmetics conference, we have a morning." Before the two brothers and sisters came to the study, Vivian stared at the door of the study, wondering if it was an illusion. She seemed to hear the sound of waves. The wooden door seems to have become wet and full of salty smell, and it seems that there is not a study behind it, but a blue sea. Supernatural power. Vivian took a deep breath, but made up her mind to check that diary carefully. Through this period of study, she knew that this kind of book containing supernatural power was extremely dangerous. "Look at mine." Joan took out two small wires, stuck them into the keyhole, and moved them lightly. Click. With the sound of tendency, the iron lock opened. "Ma'am, please." Joan opened the door and made a gesture of invitation. "My brother, if you can devote all your energy to unlocking the lock, your parents will be proud of you." Vivian rolled her eyes. "Also, just go here, I will restore everything. Presumably you are not willing to accompany me to read books, right? The hallucination just now. Let her know that there is a high probability of danger in the study. And Joan is just an ordinary person, and shouldn't be involved in this kind of turmoil. I want to protect my family." Vivian swore silently in her heart. Of course, Joan yawned, compared to reading a book, I'd rather go back and sleep. My gift has been delivered, so let's go first. After he finished speaking, he left without looking back. It seemed that looking at the copywriting in the study room was a great torture. Vivian closed the door, looked at the furnishings in the study, and let out a soothing breath. She came to her father's desk and looked at the messy draft paper on it. These should be some inspirations and ideas that were recorded casually when studying that diary, most of which are broken. Vivian glanced and saw a line of words, Sevenstown. This is probably the area where the log owner lives, but she doesn't know it at all. It wasn't until I looked down that I realized that it was a remote town by the sea. Even now it was not developed, let alone produced much. If you are not a person who specializes in geography, you may have to search for a long time on the map to find this small place. Vivian sat on her father's chair, looked at the desk drawers, and opened them one by one. When she pulled out the middle drawer on the right, a black journal came into view. I found you. Vivian smiled playfully, her expression immediately became serious. She took out the diary, spread it out and placed it on the desk. After opening the black cover, she found that the paper inside was yellow, and there were some mildew spots on the edges, which seemed to be a little wet. When she touched it with her fingertips, she had the illusion of touching some kind of slime. This reminded her of slugs, and she couldn't help feeling a little sick. But at this time, I still endured it and looked at the first page. April 1st, 1306. The sea has played a huge joke on me in the past few months. Our harvest has been very scarce. This amount of cod is not enough for me and my crew. We all have a family to support, although the days are difficult, but nothing can stop me, because we are the people of the sea. 1306. About 300 years ago. Vivian said to herself. At that time, the steam engine and the telephone had not yet been invented, and the whole world was shrouded in backwardness and ignorance. Fishermen were naturally a very hard industry. Lacking scientific guidance and steam-powered ships, fishing depends entirely on the experience of old seamen and partly luck. 1306, May 2nd or 3. Wandering at sea for a long time made me forget the time, and I forgot to keep a diary for a while. I don't know if it's this day. Today we encountered a storm and lost a sail. This day is really bad, terrible. No, as the captain, I have to pull myself together. 1306, June. Harvest. The god of the sea finally favored us, and we can return to the voyage again. The flounder cooked by the cook today seems to be extraordinarily delicious. I miss Shataya. Counting the time, she should give birth soon, but unfortunately I can't be by her side. This is the fate of the people of the sea. July 5th, 1306. The boat docked, and I also know the exact time. Good news, Shataya gave birth to a pair of twins for me. I plan to name my brother Owen and my sister Faith. Come on, Spot, you will shoulder the lives of more people in the future. Vivian frowned a little. It looked like a very ordinary fisher captain's logbook named Spot. Maybe I'm overthinking it. It's nothing special. That's great. She breathed a sigh of relief and continued to turn the page. The captain doesn't keep a diary every day, he only writes it down when he thinks about it or when something special happens. 1307, March 12th. Unbelievable, I caught a monster today. It's hard to imagine that there are such creatures in the world, which look like a combination of human and fish, with fish gills. Old Hawk just knelt down and said that they were sons of the sea, the real darling of the sea, but I think it's an ugly monster, and I'm going to take it back to the town. Maybe those scholars are willing to pay a lot of money for it, even if it's just a corpse. 1307, March 15th. That monster seems to be able to talk. I must be crazy, but it's weak, it's dying, even feeding it seawater won't help. Old Hawk said we'd be cursed, hee hee. March 23. The monster is really dead. Before it died, it seemed to be yelling something. It was a very strange pronunciation, which made people feel creepy. I plan to make it into dried fish, so that it can be stored conveniently. April. The curse has been fulfilled. We haven't found anything since that day. Old Hawk disappeared last night. Hell, how could he be missing from the fishing boat? Could it be that he accidentally fell into the sea while peeing at night? But what about those scales and footprints I found? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Lord of Reincarnation. Author, Wen Xiaogong. Chapter 438. Supernatural creatures in the ocean? Vivian's expression tightened, and she quickly continued to read. 1307, April 25. I saw the real God. A large number of scales from before surrounded the ship. Most of them could only roar, but one of them was very old and could speak our language. It told me, our previous behavior angered the elders of the deep sea, and we must pay the price and pray for its forgive. It is tolerant and merciful, and will forgive and accept us, and let us become the real children of the sea, and bless us with a good harvest. Every time I tried the ritual it said, finally I really understand my mission. This person's spirit has begun to change. Vivian compared the diaries before and after, and found that the words in this diary were particularly scribbled. Obviously, Spot's spirit at that time had been affected to a certain extent. 1307, April 26. We have all received the gift. Scales grow out of the hidden parts of our bodies. This is a normal phenomenon. We will gradually approach greatness, obtain a perfect body and a long life. Bond said that we are sick. This is for the elders of the deep sea. For his impiety, we unanimously decided to sacrifice him to the elders of the deep sea. 1307, May 5. The ship returned and claimed that several crew members had been lost due to the storm. Everyone in the town accepted this reality calmly. May the deep sea like the sacrifices offered to it. The sea is kind and tolerant, and I have obtained its gift. As long as the scales are ground into powder and sprinkled into the sea, a large number of fish schools will be attracted, and we can finally get rid of poverty. 1307, December. I have become a famous person in the town. I will participate in the election of the next mayor, and I will definitely succeed. After all, it is difficult for ordinary people to accept greatness. Maybe I have to find a way to cover up the abnormalities in my body. Shataz seems to have discovered something. January 1, 1308. I became the mayor of the town, and I will promote the belief of the elders of the deep sea, when the night comes. I tried the incantation to summon the Linren at the seaside. The old man was invited and told me, I did a good job, but it was not enough. The sea needs a grand sacrifice. Shitaya is very suitable. Farewell, my love, you will receive the supreme glory and become one with the sea. Below this diary, there is another line of incantations. Vivian touched it with her fingers and felt it chill, knowing that it did have power. Damn evil God. She trembled a little, but continued to read. 1308, January 15. The ceremony was successful, and I saw the elder of the deep sea again. Human language is so pale, it's hard to describe its greatness, but the scale man priest told me that the elder of the deep sea was just an attendant of a certain existence. One existence is the true ruler of the sea. Its name is a great pronunciation, a syllable that humans cannot utter, and they can only try their best to imitate similar meanings. It is called Nicholas. It turned out to be it. The enemy of my lord last time. Vivian clutched her chest, and saw a bright red underline under Nicholas' pronunciation, which was marked by later researchers. Among them, there is also the handwriting of my father. Maybe it is a variant of a certain ocean belief. I need to borrow related religious books. Oops, it's getting more and more dangerous now. Vivian frowned. Although this book is not a real scripture, it is also full of taboos. For example, the incantations for summoning the scales, the name taboo of Nicholas, and detailed descriptions of some rituals. After ordinary people get it, it is indeed possible to go astray because of it. She gritted her teeth and quickly flipped through the pages. Most of what follows is the process of how Spot spreads the faith, controls the town, sacrifices the living, and trades with the scales. She swept her eyes and saw a more important one. 1309. After many sacrifices, the elders of the deep sea gave me a response. When the stars return to their positions, the ruler of the sea will wake up, but that will be hundreds of years later. No, this will not work. I asked the priest again, and it told me that there is another way. If a great person wants to come to the world, he can also be conceived through the hotbed of life. There must be a suitable candidate. I asked it which candidate is suitable, and it said I knew it a long time ago. Yes, I knew it. I am so honored. My sons and daughters will be the signposts for the coming of the ruler of the sea. It's a pity that they are still too young, and I have to wait at least 16 years. I have a great plan. Obviously, he must have failed, otherwise the world would be over. Vivian nodded and turned directly to the last page. 1325. Damn it, Owen betrayed me and rescued Faith. They can't do this, it's the Keeper of Secrets. The Keeper backed them up and ruined my plans. Dangerous messages from the sea let me know that an army was heading for the town. Let them come, they will only reap ruins, and I will return to the embrace of the sea with my people. As for Owen and Faith, I will curse them, curse their souls, suffer forever, and curse their bloodline descendants. At this point, the diary is all over. Vivian closed the diary, but her mood fluctuated. It's too dangerous, it must be destroyed, huh? In her ears, there seemed to be the sound of water droplets. The sound of dripping water was getting louder and louder, as if it was going to gather into waves and hit the dam of her spirit and reason. This is spiritual pollution. This diary will secretly corrupt everyone who reads it. Vivian closed her eyes. In the darkness, she seemed to see a blue sea. Many waves swept over and turned into whirlpools. Her hair came to life one by one, turning into wriggling seaweed. Spiritual seal. Vivian took a deep breath, and mentally sketched out a double helix rune with difficulty. At the same time, the waves quickly submerged her, continuously rising from her feet, covering her calves, thighs, waist, nose and mouth, suffocating her. They were forcing her to give up her spiritual dams and embrace the faith of a great being. Get out. When Vivian felt suffocated to the point of fainting, she finally finished the last stroke of the imprint. A ray of light emerged. Vivian woke up immediately and found that she was still sitting on the chair. But her whole body was already wet, and there were still some kelp and seaweed hanging on her body, as if she had just been picked up from the sea. The Lord of Reincarnation. Author, Wen Xiaogong. Chapter 439. No, this book is too dangerous. Vivian took a few deep breaths, immediately picked up the diary, threw it into a file bag, and sealed it tightly. Originally, she was just going to watch it again, and then restore the scene. But now, she's scared. This book is indeed shrouded in evil power, and maybe even her father has been obsessed with it. No. My father is just an ordinary person, and he doesn't have much inspiration. Maybe he won't be like me. He will change just after reading it, but he is definitely eroded by the dark. Vivian had no choice but to hide the book first. She carried the document bag, went back to her room, and started to circle around. What should I do? What should I do? This kind of thing related to supernatural powers, ordinary people and even police officers can't help much. She immediately thought that she could only turn to her fellow believers and that very powerful mentor for help. Thinking of this, Vivian immediately spread out the letter paper, described the recent situation, and asked for help from her close friends and your mentor. At this time, she was extremely fortunate that the mentor had sent a messenger before. Good dog, it's up to you. Looking at the invisible windhound disappearing into the corner, Vivian muttered to herself. At the same time, Fuley's auction house. A number of security guards fell to the ground, their limbs twitching and foaming at the mouth. What caused this scene was a female figure in a black robe. Everyone in the auction house was overwhelmed by the spiritual sea water. If it is an investigator with enough inspiration, he can see the surging sea water, with blue and emerald green colors, surging in the hall, drowning everything he sees. Whether it was the security guards with guns, ordinary waiters and managers, or even innocent passers-by, they were all submerged in the sea water and showed symptoms of suffocation. Mortal. The black-robed woman stepped forward. Grab a fat manager. The fat man was bloated and obese, but she lifted it up with one hand, as if he was extremely relaxed. However, on the slightly exposed palm of the woman in black robe, one can see that it is covered with a layer of scales like a fish creature. Tell me, who bought that diary? She asked, her voice hoarse. A university professor named, living in. The manager's mental dam has long since been washed away. He rolled his eyes and answered every question. Click. After asking what she wanted, the black-robed woman exerted a little force on her palm. The fat manager's neck twisted to the side and he fell to the ground. The black-robed woman looked around, and she ran out of the auction house. They are so fragile, like worms on the ground. The breeze blew, lifting a corner of the black robe. If Eric was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that this was Vidali who walked with him and Fang Xian and separated later. I just don't know why this girl seems to have completely changed in such a short period of time. On the ferry, Fang Xian walked out of the single cabin, came to the restaurant, ordered a cheese lobster and a fried pork chop, and ate quietly. In the past few days, he made an alibi and went out to make troubles. As a result, the ship has not yet landed. Love is going to abandon his identity and go away, which is actually good for him. After all, the keeper really can't tolerate a ghoul. As for me, although I was not exposed, I am too lazy to continue to be an investigator. If you get what you need to get, and then go to the branch to work hard, then you are sick in your head. Fang Xian cut a pork chop and thought of his own problem. To get back the tribulation power, the effect of the believer's call is extremely weak, which is equivalent to nothing. The reincarnation disc is also pressed up. If I take this path, maybe I will die of old age in this world and there will be no results. What's more unfortunate is that the end of the day can only in less than 3 years, it will come. Even if he regained the strength of the 6th level alchemist, Fang Xian didn't think he could do anything when the ancient rulers awakened. That's a group of 7 level bosses. The only thing he can do is to take the opportunity to open the reincarnation disc and hide in Delogo's reincarnation. It just seems that this path is not going to work so far. The prophecy of the last days is likely to be true. This is forcing me to take risks. Fang Xian sighed. Ordinary recovery, doesn't look like much hope. Then there is still one way left, which is to forcibly break through the 7th level of alchemist. The 6th level of alchemist is the period of extinction, and the robbery power is silent, but after the 7th level, this disadvantage naturally disappears. But there is a huge gap between level 6 and level 7. Even if I add up the difficulty of breaking through all levels since my debut, I'm afraid it won't be a fraction of it. I want to become an existence similar to the ancient ruler of this world. Hopkins is the best example. If you want to become a god in this world, you will almost never end well. There is an unimaginable distance between gods and mortal things. However, after Fang Xian's analysis, he actually felt that compared to becoming a god in other worlds, there is still a slight chance of becoming a god in this world. First of all, he himself is a big boss who has traversed the heavens, with rich experience, extremely tenacious consciousness, and knowledge that is not comparable to that of the natives. Secondly, he also got the Book of Hopkins, the Hopkins magic art on it, which gave him great inspiration. Of course, the most important thing is that there is a sleeping primordial ruler in this world. For example, under the headquarters of the secret keeper, Nicola is sealed. In other worlds, it is not easy to find a similar existence that is sealed. Hopkins is right in saying that it is very difficult to become a 7th level from scratch, but there is a little possibility of swallowing a 7th level and becoming a 7th level. Although, it is only a very small possibility, the biggest shortcoming is that you are too weak, dare to devour the ancient ruler. Is it just a gift, or an active fusion? A 7th level god, no matter how overestimated it is, even if it is sleeping, what method should I use? While Fang Xian was thinking, he felt the void around him squirm, and a hunting dog that chased the wind emerged. It's Vivian's messenger. Don't be here. He sent a look to the opposite side of the windhound to quickly understand the meaning, and sent the letter to the room. After eating the meal, Fang Xian, a somewhat lonely gentleman in the eyes of the sailors and other guests, went back to the single cabin directly. Sure enough, there was a letter on the ground. Fang Xian she ran to open it, and quickly browsed, a diary related to Linren, the elder of the deep sea, and that existence, interesting. Without hesitation, he immediately decided to intervene. To a certain extent, the master of the deep sea and the ruler of the sea, who is known of the sealed place, is his first target to usurp. The Lord of Reincarnation. Author, Wen Xiaogong. Chapter 440. Night. Vivian's house. She sat quietly on the chair, looked at her brother Joan, her father Lib, and her mother Sophia, and secretly made up her mind to protect this family. Lieber had just returned, and he hadn't had time to enter the study, so he certainly wouldn't find out about the theft of Hyman's diary. At this time, he was drinking beer absent-mindedly, and his eyes unconsciously glanced towards the study. It was as if there was an indescribable temptation hidden there. From Joan and Sophia's point of view, this is just Lieber's old habit of archaeology recurring. But when Vivian saw this scene, she felt a chill in her heart, knowing that the diary had a profound impact on her father. Those previous studies, even if Lieber was equally fanatical, would not make this family-oriented man lose his composure at the dinner table. Dad's state is already on the verge of danger. Should I wait for him to be alone and give him a spiritual seal? Vivian thought silently. This spiritual seal is the best way for ordinary people to maintain their sanity when facing supernatural phenomena. Unfortunately, without the permission of the instructor, I cannot teach it to people outside the religious order. Otherwise, if Dad has this imprint, it will be much safer to study some supernatural books. She drank the mushroom soup, and a sudden thought came to her heart that she wanted to draw the whole family into the cult. After all, in less than 3 years, the end will come. The awakening or coming of many ancient rulers will definitely bring terrible changes to the world. At that time, mastering a little supernatural power will at least give you a little more chance of surviving than others. Not to mention, before the apocalypse, all kinds of supernatural forces have become very active, and there are dangers everywhere. I'm so hungry. Joan, with a knife and fork in his hand, had already started screaming. He took the opportunity to wink at Vivian. Vivian could understand what he meant. He was saying that the last chance had come. If the previous study room was not tidied up, please find an excuse to clean it up. Vivian shook her head slightly, and saw that Sophia had come to the edge of the dining table with a plate of roast chicken, looked at Joan, and complained dissatisfiedly, "Joan, you are already an adult, don't act like a child every day. Maybe, it's time for you to move out, and you have to learn to support yourself." Joan blinked, with an innocent face, and was about to say something when his expression suddenly changed. Boom! A loud noise came from the door, and even the dishes on the table trembled violently. Who? Mrs. Sophia looked up blankly. "Don't open the door." Lieber shouted calmly, came to the edge of the living room, and picked up the double-barreled shotgun hanging on the wall. In this era, burglary and robbery are common, and if one cannot control it, it will develop into murder. Every resident is used to buying firearms and using bullets to protect themselves. According to the local law, the owner of the house has the irrefutable right to shoot and kill such trespassers. Boom. The person who came did not answer and continued to knock on the door. The wooden door let out a mournful scream, and the brass-colored metal shaft on the edge began to twist and deform. A nail flew out. Call the police. Chiaoan blocked Vivian behind her, holding the table knife firmly in her hand. Vivian, I will protect you later, remember to be obedient. If I tell you to run, run immediately. Vivian didn't answer. In fact, her spirit was sharper than everyone else, and she felt the difference when she hit the door for the first time. Outside the house, it seemed that blue sea water rose up, trying to submerge the house. That is not real sea water, but a torrent in the spiritual realm. For ordinary people, it may be even more unbearable. Therefore, she has been using her own inspiration and spirit to block the sea and waves from the door. The thing outside the door also seemed to notice this, and began to use other means to attack. Boom. Finally, after another loud bang, the door slammed back, revealing a tall black figure. It was dressed in the clothes of a tramp and was tall. It walked into the house step by step, leaving wet footprints. What? After seeing the figure's face, Ms. Sophia screamed immediately. What an ugly face was that! Twisted and crazy, covered with fish-like scales, it is simply a monster. Just looking directly at the other person, in her heart, an emotion called fear exploded, making her unable to resist at all, and only wanted to run away. Scales. Professor Lieber yelled in surprise, seeing that monster still stepped forward. He pulled the trigger without hesitation. There was a shot. Countless leads shot out like scattered flowers, and landed on the strange man, exploding a little bit of blood. Those fish-like scales are as fragile as clothes under the outbreak of modern firepower. The strange man was stunned, looking at his wound. He didn't fall down, but his speed slowed down. Click. At this moment, the left window of the living room shattered, and a large amount of glass exploded and scattered. A figure stepped in. That's another human. At the same time, there were also loud knocking sounds from the right window, from the back door, and from the wall. Ho ho, ha, am I dreaming? Joan grabbed the table knife with an exaggerated smile on his face. I just had dinner, why did I become besieged by monsters in the next second? Ho ho. The newly appeared scales seemed to have lost their sanity, and rushed towards Vivian like wild beasts. Obviously, behind them, there is another main messenger, and they also know who has been fighting. Damn it! Joan mustered up his courage and rushed forward. Puff! His table knife pierced the arm of a scaled man, but the scales and muscles removed most of his strength. The scaled man on the opposite side did not stagnate at all, his arm was raised high, and then fell suddenly. Joan was hit hard on the back of the head, lying on the ground, almost passed out. His mind was in chaos. He saw the screaming mother, the roaring father, and the stern-looking younger sister who stood up. It's you again. Vivian's pretty face was full of anger, the running dog of the elder of the deep sea, the disgusting half-fish scale man, go to hell with me. She didn't hurt herself again, because her heart was filled with anger and pain when she saw her family was destroyed and her brother fell to the ground. And mental pain can also be sacrificed to darkness. The bird with broken wings is my name, eat your pain to feed my heart. Vivian chanted loudly, feeling that her spell was cast extremely smoothly this time, and it fit perfectly with the power of darkness. Above the ground, the shadow of a bird with broken wings emerged, and rushed towards the crowd. The black shadows were sharper than any blade in the world, and the scales, who couldn't even do anything with a shotgun, fell down in groups, and the fractures of their bodies were extremely smooth. This. Joan, Lieber, and the others were stunned. They looked at Vivian as if they were looking at another person. Is this still the gentle and lovely daughter and sister? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Lord of Reincarnation. Author, Wen Xiaogong. Chapter 441. Vivian, you. Lieber looked at his daughter, feeling extremely strange. Sorry, father, I have been studying the field of supernatural power. In order to protect you, I have no choice, the monster this time should be attracted by that diary. Vivian stared out of the house. In the hazy night, the figure of a man in black robe emerged. Interesting, I didn't expect to meet an enemy who knows how to cast spells here. From under the black robe, a hoarse voice came out, but, your strength, your awareness, your pain, is it really enough? Vital laughed sharply. Crash. The spiritual ocean surrounding the house instantly rose. Under Vivian's inspiration, the blue sea rippling with waves, instantly changed from a height of more than 10 meters to tens of meters high. Not only that, but the blue color of the sea is also tinged with darkness. It was an incomparably huge giant shadow, lurking in the deep sea. The phantom of the elders of the deep sea and the ancients of the abyss. Click. An invisible crack seemed to emerge from the dike guarding the house. The gap is getting bigger and bigger, and finally it crashes. What? The moment the invisible dam collapsed, Vivian let out a scream and fell to the ground, her spirit backlashed. Vivian. Lieber wanted to help his daughter up, but felt a wave coming towards him. In an instant, Lieber, Sophia, and Joan, who wanted to get up, suddenly had tons of seawater in their consciousness, and they were so heavy that they couldn't even move a single thought. They all fell to the ground, their eyes turned white, not knowing what happened. Vivian's condition is a little better, but she also feels that the heavy sea water surrounds her, and even that touch of azure color is still penetrating into her spiritual core, trying to stain that spiritual steel seal with color. Hee, the power of mortals is really sad. Wearing a black robe, Vital walked slowly into the living room of Lieber's house along the open door. I thought, you could bring me more happiness. Vivian was already unable to answer. Her spirit was extremely heavy, and she had to resist the erosion of the sea. She didn't even have the strength to move her lips and chant mantras. At this time, the only thing that can be relied on is the power of the spiritual seal. It hasn't collapsed yet. But it's useless. Vitali looked at Lieber, and seemed to think of something interesting. Your soul will be my sacrifice, dedicated to the elders of the deep sea. It is also very interesting to make an extraordinary despair and his soul full of pain. She snapped her fingers. Lieber felt the pressure on his body disappear, and stood up involuntarily. At the same time, the look in his eyes faded quickly, becoming dazed, his pupils dilated, and scales emerged one after another on the surface of the skin. Lieber was already a bit tainted by the diary. At this time, under the influence of Vitali, she quickly humanized. Dad. Vivian struggled, feeling something. Hee, are you sad? Painful? Desperate? Next, how about letting it do the punishment? There was a gleam of fierceness in Vitali's eyes. She did intend to use Lieber, who had lost her humanity after transformation, to be the executioner who killed the whole family. At that time, you will probably be able to harvest several souls full of sadness and despair. That would be a very happy sacrifice for the elders of the deep sea. Reber's block. After such a big thing happened, it was still peaceful. Hoo, fortunately, I caught up. Smith stuck out his tongue in exhaustion. After he received the distress letter, he skipped class and got on the train to Vivian's house. He kept on going, changed transportation several times, and finally arrived here after dark. Looking at the peaceful neighborhood, A trace of joy could not help but appear on his face. "You didn't catch up." A tall, thin man suddenly turned around the corner. "Is it Mr. Mickey? This is the first time we meet in real life." Smith said excitedly, "Why did you say you didn't catch up?" When Mickey came to Vivian's house, what he saw was a peaceful villa with warm light shining from the windows. "This is not real, but an illusion. Have you ever heard of a mirage? In the ocean, it is possible to see the phantom of land. This is a magic effect caused by the refraction of light." Mickey narrowed his eyes standing up, staring at the Vivian family's mansion ahead. "Here, is surrounded by a layer of mirage. Of course, the level is a little higher." "Then what should we do?" Smith asked blankly. "The first point of fighting the heretics is to pay attention to hiding your identity, otherwise, whether you are seeking revenge or being noticed by investigators, it will not be a good thing." Mickey put on a black mask. It was only then that Smith realized that Mickey was not only wearing a black jacket, but also a peaked cap. At this time, if he dressed up a little bit, no one would be able to recognize him. "In comparison, I look like an idiot." "I knew you didn't prepare anything." Mickey threw a shopping paper bag to Smith. "Take it and put it on your head, poke a few holes and it will work." "Don't. How is this different from those gangsters who robbed with stockings?" Smith screamed in shame. "Face or death, you choose. I only give you 3 seconds." Mickey stared ahead with a solemn expression, and began to break through this layer of mirage. In the second, Smith sighed resignedly, and quickly put on the paper bag. The next moment, he saw that the space of Vivian's house was distorted, and a curtain was broken open. A brand new villa appeared in front of his eyes. The doors, windows, and walls were all damaged, and there were human corpses strewn about on the ground. The stench of blood flowed horizontally. This scene immediately reminded Smith of the island, and the scene of fighting the scales at that time. Is it my lord's enemy again? Even if it's not because of Ms. Vivian's father, we have to fight against him. The lost god will love our devotion. Mickey shouted, and added silently in his heart, "Madam will also remember my friendship this time." He exchanged glances with Smith, chanted the immortal psalm loudly, and moved towards the villa. "Do not." Vivian looked at her father, who had already half transformed into a human, and was about to drop the seed when he raised it high. Her eyes were full of despair. Just then, she heard the immortal psalm in praise of the lost god. That majestic voice directly overwhelmed the sound of the waves, and rescued her from the sea of spirits. Vivian seized the opportunity, bit the tip of her tongue, and a drop of blood depicted the rune of the old seal of blood. Into Reber's forehead. Snapped. When the chair fell to the ground, Lieber held his head and screamed. "Who interrupted the sacred ceremony?" Vidal had a grim expression, staring outside the house. There, 2 figures came over. One was wearing a black peaked cap and mask, and the other had a paper bag on his head, which looked very funny. The Lord of Reincarnation. Author, Wen Xiaogong. Chapter 442. Believers in the deep sea. You can't disturb the believers of our Lord and their families. Mickey looked at Vidal, keenly aware of the danger, but he still took a deep breath and said loudly. "Sure enough, this woman is not an investigator, but she knows spells. I thought she got the information from her father, but she is also a pagan." Vitali muttered to herself, "But I only believe in the sea god, other beliefs have nothing to do with me. Heretics, let your gods bless you." Behind her, the sea became more and more turbulent, and the shadow of the deep sea elder became extremely large, bringing terrifying mental pressure. "This psalm will live on and give you immortality." At this time, Mickey and Smith recited the immortal poem to the last line. Boom! A powerful deterrent erupts. The black shadow of the elder of the deep sea seemed to have stagnated for a moment, no longer expanding or moving. Even Vidali's movements became sluggish. "Oh! You're not bad, but you're still close. Vidali hissed, the high priest of the scales, help me. In the illusory sea, at an unknown time, another old figure of a human appeared. It was covered in scales and was not wearing any clothes. It held a bone scepter and screamed hoarsely. It was a complex language, composed of various syllables, not like the sounds that humans can make. And what it screams, there is only one word, that is Nikolaya. This old scale man is calling the name of Nikolaya. Its power, its personality, and its unique voice already represent enough influence. It is possible to get a response from Nicholas for such a call. Even if Nicholas didn't respond, the name alone has power, the power of the sea. Really compare. Even the immortal psalms are still a big level short. Boom. The illusory and turbulent sea poured backwards, submerging Mickey and Smith. What? Smith felt that he was walking through a vortex, and there were countless undercurrents under his feet. If he didn't pay attention, he would be completely lost. Although this is an illusory mental shock, it will still bring physical pain. Hold on. Maybe the mentor will come next moment, Mickey shouted. We all know that he seems to have the ability to teleport. At this time, the old scale man vibrated the gills of the fish, and uttered a few obscure syllables. Vivian and the others looked dazed, but saw the black-robed woman screaming, "Shut up, Spot, I have my own thoughts and plans, I will sacrifice them first, and then go find this diary." Spot, this name, is that seaman captain? Vivian was in a trance for a while, looking at the figure of the old man, feeling an illusion of history coming into reality. Wait a minute, then this woman. She was suddenly inspired, looked at Vital, and shouted, "Are you a descendant of Owen or Faith? You have to be careful about Spot. Although he is your ancestor, he is also the chief culprit who cursed you." Puff. Just as Vivian finished shouting, she was kicked out by Vidali. The latter sneered, "I have known about this for a long time, my ancestors were too ignorant, only the master of the deep sea is the ruler of everything, let the other party return, master everything, and be able to control everything." What's wrong? If there is no blood of the sea, how can it be possible to be stimulated to awaken the human blood after going to sea? Perhaps for human beings, scale humans are aliens. But in the eyes of Vital at this time, the scale human is a superior life form. Let the ruler of the sea return, let the world come under the rule of an ancient god, it is better than the end. Crazy, this man has gone completely crazy. Vivian looked at Vital in this state and shook her head inwardly. At this time, the old scale man priest Spot uttered a few more shouts, as if urging him. "Don't force me, you old guy's body is not here, if you force me again, I will completely destroy your spiritual imprint." Vital yelled, "I'm going to deal with the three of them first, you old bastard, huh?" She suddenly looked up and saw a black spot in the sky whose speed was almost as fast as the speed of sound. It was a big tattered bird with jet-black flame-like feathers and bat-like wings. It spread its wings, overflowing with substantial pain. The pitch-black feathers fell one by one into the sea of spirits, causing the phantom of the elder of the deep sea to quickly disintegrate. This is normal. After all, as the ancients, the deep sea elder at this time is just a phantom summoned by Vitali. The bird with broken wings is called by Fang Xian, a part of the projection of the real bird with broken wings combined with physical power. Pieces of pitch-black feathers turned into abysses of pain, dispelling the previous ocean. Ah, this is, the existence that fought against the elders of the deep sea last time. Spot only had time to let out a loud roar before being submerged by the pitch-black feathers, and this mental imprint instantly collapsed. What? Pieces of black feathers sank into Vidali's body, causing extreme pain. She thought back to the past, thought of her hobbies, thought of travel, ships, and the two gentlemen on it. Of course, the subsequent whispers of the sea and various tortures were also indispensable. What? Vidali's eyes were red, and she growled and looked at the existence standing on the back of the broken-winged bird. It actually reminds me of such unbearable painful memories. I will kill you, I swear, I will definitely kill you. On the back of the bird with broken wings, Fang Xian recognized Vidal at a glance, and his expression was slightly startled. It's you. He thought of it. It must be that the abnormality of the island was not completely eliminated last time, and Vidali took part of it away, which caused her alienation. You go. He waved his hand, looked down at Vidali, and told her to leave. This is not only based on the past friendship, but more importantly, he has secretly planted a mark on Vidali's body, and wants to see if he can find the hidden tribe of the scales through the other party and obtain some information. Raka. Vidali also seemed to recognize Fang Xian. She couldn't help being startled, and immediately laughed. Did everything on the island be caused by you? No, it's not, I just happened to. Fang Xian shrugged his shoulders. Eric and I are both investigators, of course, I am not now. Haha, destiny, what an interesting thing. If you paid more attention to me, maybe you wouldn't. Vidali's black robe burned completely, revealing the figure of one of the female scales. Now, it's too late. She turned around and quickly disappeared into the night.